talking about faith. It takes faith to show gratitude. It takes faith to even say thank you. And it surely takes faith when you give that gratitude towards God himself. So it's a powerful lesson. It's talking about faith. It's going to unlock true faith in your life. Just a little bit of faith can revolutionize your world. Just a little bit of faith. Over there in Mark chapter 11, somewhere around verse 22 on down to 24, it said, if you believe, whenever you pray, if you believe that you have possession of that you're asking for, it says you will have it. You will see it. You will begin to experience it. Over there in John chapter 15, I like what it says in verse 7. It says, if you abide in me. This word becomes real in your life. And this word begins to habitate home of your mind. It begins to habitate home of your heart. When the power of God's word becomes real in your life, he says at that moment, you can ask whatsoever you will. He said, you abide in me, and I abide in you. You can ask whatsoever you will. You talk about a great Christmas list. You talk about what Santa Claus is going to bring you. He says you can ask whatever you desire. Does anybody have a heart's desire today? Does anybody have a need from Christ today? I want you to know that God is the answer. I want you to know that Christ is the answer. I want you to know that Jesus and faith in him is the solution for each and every pain in your life. Well, now, how do I know that? I know that because in this particular lesson in Luke chapter 17, starting there in verse 11, going on down to verse 20, it's in that lesson you came where we find a man that had a painful problem. And so this man had a painful problem, but he was surrounded, Caleb, by 9 other individuals that had a painful circumstance in life. And so that's how the lesson began. Can anybody identify with having a level of pain? Can anybody identify with having some type of need in life? There are some that are married and you want love to be rekindled. There are some of you that are thinking about getting married and you want to make sure that it's the right person. There are some of you that are working a job and you want to know when you're going to get your promotion. There are some of you that have a business and you want to know, Lord, when are you going to send the clients that I've been praying about? There are some that have aches in their body, pains in their body, or maybe they have a loved one with devastating sickness. And when nobody's looking, sometimes you pray, Jaleesa, for that loved one, that God will bring healing and hope to that particular person's life. And so we find that this lesson began with a horrible pain, a painful problem. And the lesson went forward from a painful problem to these individuals say, you know what? Let's start public prayer. Let's just pray together. And so we find that these 10 individuals who had nothing but a whole host of problems. We find these 10 individuals who had nothing but pains and aches and did not know how to solve their pains and aches. They decided, I'm just going to pray. And I'm not only going to pray, I'm going to pray out loud. I'm not only going to pray out loud, I'm going to pray on this form. And I'm not only going to pray on this form, but I'm going to pray to Jesus. And so the story says that they came with their great pain and predicament in their body, and they came to Jesus and they prayed to Jesus. They said, Jesus, have mercy on us. And so it was in the midst of that prayer that Jesus showed them some pity. And in the midst of showing them some pity, Jesus gave them a process. So I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what kind of pain you have. I don't know what kind of ache you have. I don't know what kind of hope, what kind of desires. If you're 15 or 16, you still have a hope and desire. Whether it's to play on the basketball team, whether it's to take so-and-so to the movie. We all have a hope and a prayer. One of the first prayers I prayed in high school was, I hope they let me take it to the movies, Lord. That was one of my earlier prayers. And it came fast. And so we all have a prayer. And so here they are on the corner of public prayer, and Jesus shows them some pity. In the midst of showing them some pity, he gives them a process. And so I don't know where you are, but I want you to know it's a process. It's not that God has said no. He's just saying no right now. That is a process. Sometimes you already have the yes. It's just a process. Sometimes he has to realign your mind. Sometimes he has to realign your heart. Sometimes he has to reposition your life. Sometimes he'll take you from one job to another job. You might not even know where that other job is. Sometimes he has answers, but he just said it's a process. So he gives them a process, and they began to go in pursuit of the process. Now that's called obedience. So they began to receive a word from God after prayer. They get a word from God, so they have the word, he gives them a process, and then they begin to pursue the process in the midst of obedience. And then in the midst of that, then, after all that, after the pain, after the prayer, after the pit, it was then, as they were obedient, that they began to see change in their lives. Whatever God told you to do, just do it. Whatever it is he told you to do, he's not going to change. He's not going to speak in a new language. He means what he means, and he speaks very clearly in your heart in a way that you get it. He'll use an illustration that only you know what that means. He speaks your language. He speaks 13-year-old language. He speaks 16-year-old language. Go on. Lee, he speaks the language of hard-working man. He speaks the language, Darren. He speaks your language. And so God is speaking. And so in the midst of this change, in the midst of this process, I'm just trying to tell you a story so you'll know, but in the midst of this process, we find two things happen. That is a decision. One of the greatest mistakes we make is that when we're in the process of change, we stop doing what God has done. When we're in the process of growth, we try to do it a new way. You know, the old folks used to say, I'm gonna ride the horse that brought me here. And some of them would say, I'm gonna dance with the one that what? Brought me to the dance. And so God will give us a process, he'll give us an assignment, and then we'll start seeing the fruits of obedience operating and working in our lives. And then we say, we're going to try this over here that we know and not work for us in the past. And so there was two decisions that took place. One individual said, I'm going to the place. And another individual said, I'm heading back to the person. And so the non-individual said, hey, change is here. This is what I've always wanted. This is what I've always desired. And it is happening. And they became overly focused on the blessing. And they forgot who blessed them. But there was one individual who said, this blessing is nice. This blessing is everything I thought it would be. But I got to go back to the one who blessed me. So the individual comes back to the person of Jesus Christ. Now, when he comes back to the person of Jesus Christ, we're talking about gratitude, when he comes back to the person of Jesus Christ, he comes back with praise. He comes back with praise and worship. Now, he started with a pain, but then the story ends with him understanding a little bit about praise and worship.